Hi, I'm Kim McGuinness. I'm your Northumbria Police and Crime Commissioner. Thank you very much for joining us this evening to talk about safety on nights out here in the North East. We are at Charts Bar. It's not our normal night out, I don't think. You know, we are here in a closed bar, and a huge thank you to Charts for letting us host our Facebook Live from here. And I'm joined by Assistant Chief Constable Neil Hutchinson. And this evening, what we're going to do is talk to you a little bit about what's going on to keep everyone safe when they're going for a night out. Obviously, we know that the North East is known for being a brilliant place to have a night out, and we want it to stay like that. It's one of the most appealing parts of our region. And there's an awful lot goes on that you can see, that's visible, with police out there on in the nighttime economy when you're out having your night out. But there's also loads going on behind the scenes to keep everyone safe, and hopefully we'll have the chance to demystify a little bit of that this evening, and to talk a little bit about how that works, and you know, how it prevents crime essentially in our bars and clubs and restaurants, in our town centres, particularly over Christmas when everyone's doing it a little bit more. There is a chat function, so please do put your comments and your questions, and we will take live questions a little bit later in the session. And even if you don't get your question answered by myself or by Neil, there's a little team here who are ready to answer questions online as well. Even if you come to this a little bit later and it's not live for you, you can continue to post questions and we will try to answer them. So I think probably first of all, the best thing to do would be for us to just talk a little bit more generally about some of what's going on. Obviously recently we've been successful in our area getting a bit of funding in to keep our nighttime economy safe, particularly in Newcastle, and we're spending that on things like street pastors and safe havens, and a little bit of plainclothes work as well. So do you want to talk to us about kind of what you do day to day to keep people safe when they're having a night out?
Absolutely. For us, it's really important that people, when they're enjoying the great night out that we get in this area, the fantastic venues that we have, that they feel safe and that they are safe. And we have extensive plans around this. Every weekend we have a nighttime economy operation that gets run in the force. We put additional officers in, and anybody who goes out in Newcastle or Sunderland and some of our other nighttime areas are going to see that. They'll see additional officers on patrol working alongside our partners. So we also have the Safe Haven vehicle in Newcastle, and we've established a new Safe Haven now in Sunderland as well, where we work with St John's Ambulance, and police officers are there to provide help to people that need it. This is all very obvious, and people will see that all the time when they're out and about. Those officers that are out are briefed about their role to keep people safe, to watch for people that might be vulnerable and need their assistance, and to offer that support. What's less obvious is some of the work that we do with our partners in the businesses. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. There's a city centre coordination group where we work with the local authorities, we work with security industry providers, with the universities, with the businesses, to come up with plans and to think about what information we have about what's happening and how we can best deal with that. We have the volunteer services that are provided by our excellent street pastoral organisations that go out keeping people safe of a weekend. We have taxi marshals at the main taxi ranks, and very importantly we do a lot of training, we do a lot of information sharing with businesses, so that the door staff, the bar staff know what to look out for, know sort of behaviour that might be suspicious and how to report that, know to watch for individuals who might need their support and their help, who might be vulnerable, might be a bit worried about some of the behaviour they're experiencing, and we give them training and support about the assistance and help they can provide to make sure that their businesses are really safe environments where people can enjoy themselves.
Which is really important, because that, you know, ultimately what this is all about is keeping our brilliant city centre, town centre environments safe so people can enjoy them. And
it's from everybody's interest.
Yeah, and I think recently, and I've talked about this quite a lot before, obviously in the aftermath of the murder of Sarah Everard and Sabina Nessa, we have had a real outpouring of concern about women's safety, and you know, I feel that. I know what it's like to walk home with my keys in my hands and keep flat shoes in my bag. But what are the police doing in Northumbria that's specifically aimed at keeping women here safe? Because I know that's so important to so many.
As I said, all of our operations are looking specifically for vulnerability in areas of concern, particularly locations where people might feel less safe, and we make sure that we have more presence there. We're currently working with the council around putting in more CCTV and better lighting in areas. And one of the things we're quite proud of here, we were the first area in the country to introduce, describe it as a plain clothes operations. We call it Operation Cloak here, where we deploy officers in plain clothes into the nighttime economy each weekend, and they're specifically tasked to look for people who might be vulnerable, who might be a bit unsafe, to offer them support, to go and step in, working alongside their uniformed colleagues to make sure that people who might have lost their friends, who might not be able to get home, who might feel unsafe, have someone who's watching out for them.
Yeah, and I know that, in the aftermath of the Sarah Everard case, this was something that was discussed in other parts of the country as if it was a new idea, and a lot of groups didn't like the idea, didn't like the idea of a frankly, a male cop in plain clothes approaching women in the nighttime economy. But this is stuff that's happened in Northumbria successfully for a long time.
Several years now, yeah. It was 2018 when we first introduced it. Obviously, the officers are deployed with uniformed colleagues, and as male and female officers used in relation to deployment, of course. We found it really successful. We've certainly got lots of examples of where people have been safeguarded, where they've been looked after, we've been able to get them home safely. I've personally had thank you letters from people for the support that we gave. We've also identified individuals who I describe as predatory in their behaviour, who are out looking for vulnerable people, and the individuals have been arrested, intelligence has been gathered, we've worked out who to look for, and then we share that information with the business premises, so the door staff know who to look for and what to look for, and we make sure that we're continuously reviewing our approach to make sure we're deploying the right areas in the right way to keep people safe in our city centres.
And I think at this point it's really important to say that if you are out and you are in Newcastle or Sunderland or Whitley Bay or wherever you might be, and you see something that you're not comfortable with, you call 999 or 101, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd always encourage people to tell us if there's something they're worried about or they're concerned about. Something we've introduced just recently, obviously people are very concerned at the moment about the prospect of drink spiking and this issue, and we have seen an increase in people reporting that they feel that may have happened to them, which we very much welcome. We want people to tell us when that's happened so that we can investigate and identify individuals who might be out looking to do that. We have an operation in place around it with a response where our officers know exactly what to do if they're approached by anybody who thinks that might have happened to them. And we're very confident about the help and the support that we can provide for anybody who feels that may have happened to them or their friend. So we've been deploying a lot of additional officers in relation to that. Sometimes you'll see those people. We've had uniform officers going into bars, patrolling through them. That's that visible reassurance. But I also want people to be reassured we also have less visible officers in plain clothes. And one of the reasons for that plain clothes deployment is part of their task is to look for individuals who might be trying to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and obviously I got in touch with you actually at the beginning, particularly of the university term, when we saw an uplift in reporting about this, and more conversation about it online, particularly on Instagram and Facebook. And you reassured me you investigate every single one of them.
Absolutely, yes. Every single one gets investigated. I get regular reports about every incident that we've had within the force of that nature. And one of the things we're doing, as well as working with the businesses, who I know are all taking this very seriously, and looking to see what they can do to prevent that happening. We also work with the universities, where we go in, we give safety briefings to students. We have dedicated university liaison officers in all of our universities, working closely with their wellbeing departments to help keep young people safe.
And I mean, I've been out with the police on an evening, on a busy Saturday night. It's a sight to behold, lots of people having a great time. But one of the things that really struck me is how important a role places like this play, the bars,
Absolutely.
the bar staff, the door staff in particular, and you hold briefings. And
we do, yeah. We find the businesses here have an excellent relationship, working closely with the police, and that includes hotels as well as bars and nightclubs. We regularly engage with the door staff and the bar staff and the managerial staff, taxis as well, to make sure that everybody's aware what to look for and what to do when they see it. In fact, I was out on patrol with some officers a while back, walking past the venue, and a member of the door staff approached us, officers in uniform obviously, and said, we've got a young lady here who's lost a friend, quite distressed. need some support and help.
Yeah.
Can you assist as officers with this? Which of course we could. And that's exactly the kind of relationship we encourage and we get with the business.
Yeah, and it's really encouraging. It's sort of a testament to that friendly atmosphere that we're able to have here. I'm going to move this on a little bit, and we have been talking about doing this session for a little while. Obviously we had to rearrange because we were both ill, but we're here now. And people have submitted questions in advance, and one of the things that we've had a lot of people ask us about is drugs, and not necessarily just spiking, but more drug use in the city centre, but not just in the city centre, also on estates, at parties. People feel, they're telling us that they're seeing more drugs.
Yeah, drugs is a very serious concern for us in this region. We've always had it as a very significant priority for us. As you know, the police and crime plan is one of our key priority areas. The harm that's caused by the supply of illegal drugs and the use of illegal drugs. We're very committed around that, and we do lots of operations on a regular basis. So I'd encourage anybody who has information or intelligence about what they're concerned about in their communities that might be drug supply behaviour to let us know, because we certainly take action on it. One of the things we're really pleased about is this year we've been selected as one of a small number of cities in the country that's receiving a lot of additional funding in relation to helping us to address the harm caused by drugs. Newcastle Council have also received funding in relation to this, and the other local authorities have some additional funding to work with us around this. That's enabled us to do more proactive operations targeting drug suppliers. It's also enabled us to have drug testing in custody, so individuals who've been arrested for behaviour where we think drugs might be a factor do get tested to see if they've taken drugs. That information is then supplied into court. But also, very importantly, we're working really closely with the drug treatment providers to ensure that those individuals can get supported, that they can be approached. We'll speak to them about why it is that they're taking drugs and offer them support in order to change their lifestyle and to be able to stop.
And that prevention is so important, isn't it? So obviously we certainly provide huge amounts of education work into schools, into community groups, work with youth groups and a whole range of people, particularly young people, to try and prevent people from getting involved in drugs in the first place, prevent them from getting involved in drug gangs, prevent them from being involved in the movement of drugs. And then of course the next step is, you know, if somebody is involved in drugs, then getting them off them, you know. And I think that drug testing on arrest thing is something that we should be doing all the time. But funding is such a massive issue for the police, particularly on things like that, and they need to be a priority, and we will keep them a priority in Northumbria. I just want to take a minute to remind everybody you can ask questions live here on the Facebook live stream, and we will try and deal with those questions myself. Probably more likely, Neil, to answer your operational questions about what's going on. I'm going to take us to a question that both of us are really used to answering, which is all about more police presence and that general feeling that we perhaps don't see enough police on the streets. And we know that one area you're pretty much guaranteed to see the police is in Newcastle city centre or Sunderland city centre on an evening, on a weekend. But more broadly, and I know, you know, we've had very significant cuts to police numbers, 1,142 cops gone since 2010. We're uplifting, we are bringing more cops through, but it takes a little while to train them, 3 years in fact. And so can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on kind of police presence as a deterrent and you know, how we manage?
It is important. Obviously we try to maintain as visible a presence out in our communities as we possibly can. We have officers that are on patrol and responding to incidents. We have a very wide range of different tasks and activities that we have to carry out as a force. But one thing we are very committed to in Northumbria is our neighbourhood police presence. We have a very significant part of our organisation, hundreds of officers and police and community support officers who are dedicated to neighbourhood teams, and a big part of their role is being out addressing issues in our communities. But that's not just a simple matter of walking the streets and patrolling. They're trained in problem solving. They're trained in working with partner agencies and volunteer organisations to identify the causes behind some of the issues that we're experiencing in our communities, and to come up with really long-term solutions for those problems in order to achieve long-term reductions in crime and antisocial behaviour in our communities. So So absolutely, you will see those officers out on patrol.
Yeah.
We focus them in those areas which have the highest levels of risk and demand for us, but we do try to maintain a visible presence everywhere in all of our communities because it is important. Ideally, I would like to be able to have more officers, as many officers as possible out in our streets.
Yeah.
Of course I would, but we have to make the best use of the resources we have. We are, however, at the moment, as you know, recruiting a lot of additional officers into the force, which is great news. They do take considerable time to train, but it is important to recognise that during that period they do spend quite a lot of their time out on the street doing police work, working with more experienced colleagues while they're going through their studies and learning and developing to become a fully fledged police officer.
Yeah, and I'm really proud of Northumbria Police for that uplift programme. It's really important, and of course, where they'll really cut their teeth at times will be the nighttime economy.
Sure.
But it does take time to get them out there, and in the meantime, all of this stuff is going on to keep people safe, and that remains a priority. I'm going to take us first of all to a question that we have had in advance of today, which is about, I suppose, that question about keeping women and girls safe. And we received a question from somebody who'd worked in education previously and who said it's alarming how much violent sexual content is available online and how much it educates young people on what to expect from relationships. The concern from this person is that girls expect to be abused and boys take it as a right to do so. Now, I don't think we can say that of all girls and of all boys, but this is a definite concern, isn't it, for us, thinking about how do we change the culture.
I think the safety of women and girls is a social issue, but I think we all have a responsibility to try and address. There are very justified reasons why people would be concerned about some of the behaviours that we can see in our society, and I think we all have a part to play in changing that. The most important thing that I think we can do in relation to that particular question is education of young people, is speaking to young people about these issues. As you know, we have officers and staff that do go into schools, working with the violence reduction unit as well, that provide a lot of that service, where we go and educate young people, we speak to them about these issues, we speak about safety online as well, when they're online themselves, about some of the risks that are out there. Mm-hmm. And we do have dedicated officers whose job is to look at what happens online, who are investigating, going onto websites, looking for individuals who seek to prey on young people.
Yeah.
And dealing with those individuals.
I can't stress the importance of dealing with young people to prevent these things from happening in the future. And I think this resident's absolutely right that we need to be focusing. Yes, it's important to put more street lighting, more CCTV, more cops on the street, whatever you think it might be to tackle the problem, but we've got to prevent it from happening in the first place. Yeah,
and there are risks that happen on the street and in public places, but there are also risks that happen
online particularly. So Sharon has asked us a question, and this is quite specific, and I know you won't be able to comment on the specific case, but just scenarios like this, which I suppose are a kind of tale all this time, and how do we try to change, again, the culture. So Sharon said her niece and her boyfriend, who were 18, were attacked in a pub in Newcastle by a man and a woman, and yet they were the ones thrown out of the pub, and the man and the woman then followed them. In that situation, how do we stop things like that from happening? And what would you say to Sharon about her niece and her boyfriend?
Again, I talk about the work that we do with bars, pubs and clubs around their policies, their processes, their security inside. We do advise around whether it be the layout of the bar, the policies around entry, what to do if there is an incident, obviously contacting the police, and we provide that very close cooperation. So we have a pub watch scheme where bars can identify individuals who do engage in that sort of behaviour. We've become quite aggressive for sharing information about those individuals, and we do that both through the pub watch scheme, and also we have a dedicated radio channel, which a lot of our venues, our premises have got access to, and they can call information straight or share information.
And it's really important to say bar staff and door staff can get training from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and from the force.
Yes. Yeah, and we're expanding that at the moment. Some of this additional funding that we've successfully bid for and have received recently is going to be used to expand some of the already very successful training programs that we have, open it into more areas and more premises. But we've had really good take up from that in the past.
Yeah.
We've got more training events happening this month, and we have premises putting their staff forward for that all the time, because they're really keen to get it, and they're really keen to work with us around these issues, because it's in everybody's interest for those sort of incidents not to happen.
Yeah, and sometimes bouncers get a bad rep, but actually, you know, I've heard some incredible stories where they've intervened and made the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very keen that the door staff who work in this area are security industry accredited, and they are absolutely. And we have, I would say, a very close working relationship with the companies that provide those staff and those individuals who work at the premises. It can be a difficult, challenging job. I absolutely understand that, having dealt with some of these similar situations myself in my police career. So we want to work closely with them to ensure that when these sort of incidents do happen, they get handled as safely and effectively as they can.
Dan's asked a question, actually, and I think this is something that will be on so many people's minds in the next few weeks as, you know, the bars and the pubs get busier and it becomes more difficult to get home, and, you know, perhaps those who are looking a bit vulnerable and a bit dishevelled might find it more difficult to get home. So how do Northumbria Police support in ensuring people get home safely, and especially with the use of services like Uber rather than previous obvious black cabs and unknown firms? I suppose the question Dan's really asking is about, you know, the ability to track somebody when they're you know, perhaps on their way home, or to, you know, to be more safe.
Those facilities are available for people. They can use and use with their loved ones on their phones, of course. The work that we do is, at the moment, we've got a communication plan that we may have seen the flyers for, that we've been putting out, talking about the work that we do in order to plan for each weekend, and we'd encourage people going out for a weekend to plan as well.
Yeah.
Think about, you know, where am I going to go, how am I going to get home, how staying with your friends, what sort of places you want to go to, making sure you've got your phone with you, your keys, you know, enough money to get home, those kind of things. These are the thought processes that we go through when we're preparing our nighttime economy plans and operations, and we'd encourage people to think themselves around how to have a good night out, basically, how to make sure everything goes well. But to be reassured that we are absolutely out there all the time.
It's not about putting the impetus on people to keep themselves safe.
No.
It's about, you know, people are protected where they are, but similarly,
we're there for them as well. And if things do go wrong, if things don't work out the way they would have wanted, say they've lost their friends, they're distressed, they're not sure what to do. As I've said before, we have the safe haven, we have our officers on patrol. We know that the staff in our licensed premises are briefed what to do. If you go and ask for help, you get it. And certainly we've got officers out there ready to provide that help. And again, some excellent volunteer organisations in this area that we work really closely with.
So important. For anyone who doesn't know, do you want to explain what the Safe Haven is?
Safe Haven is a marked vehicle. We normally park it up quite often by the cathedral in the city centre of Newcastle, where there's always police officers there and St John's ambulance staff on a Friday and Saturday night. They're through the night, ready to, if anybody is ill, injured, needs a bit of support, they can go there. All the officers that are deployed know where it is, and we can take individuals there if they need a bit of assistance, get an immediate assessment. Obviously, if somebody needs hospital attention, we'll arrange for that to be taken, but in many cases that's not what's needed.
And I think on this getting home point, you know, a massive shout out, you've mentioned the volunteer organisations, our street pastors who operate in all of the major centres where people are out of an evening or a weekend, and they do incredible work, just making sure that people are comfortable, safe. We've got flip-flops, we've got water, we've got a blanket if they're cold. We've obviously now got Women's Street Watch out there who are gaining some incredible traction, really great reputation, also working with the police. They're really keen to get a taxi service operational, which I think would be an outstanding idea. And so all of this is going on in partnership with the force.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased in Sunderland we've just had identified and provided a premises to use as a safe haven there, so we can provide the same service. So we're always aware that there is lots of activity that we do now, but more that we can do. We're always looking for new methods that we can, or tactics we can bring in to help provide as safe an environment as possible And I'm really pleased that we've been able to successfully get some additional funding to enable us to take us forward. And this is enabling us to expand the work we're doing, provide more of those Operation Plainclothes deployments in different areas, as well as just in Newcastle, we're expanding out into other parts of the force area now, to put more officers on available on the patrols to ensure that we have things like our taxi marshals who manage those main taxi ranks of the weekend and make sure that people can feel safe while they're waiting to get a taxi home.
Okay, lovely. Now, the questions are starting to come in thick and fast, so I think if we go to a couple of those and we'll be able to answer them for people. So Charlie, we've already touched on this actually, but there's been lots of reports of an increase in spiking across the country, and you've already talked a little bit about what work is going on this and the fact that you report. But one of the things I'm very aware of is that we become so aware of so many things so quickly because of things like social media, particularly Instagram and so on. Does the size of the problem as it looks online reflect what we're seeing in action?
We've certainly seen an increase in people coming forward while this has been an issue that's being discussed in the media. So it raises the
Which is a good thing.
That is a good thing, because what we would encourage, if anybody thinks that could have happened to them, if they suddenly come over feeling deeply unwell and thinking this isn't right, or my friend is suddenly very unwell, this is not normal, then we would want them to seek medical attention, and they can be assessed either by our St John's ambulance staff or paramedics and officers that will support them. With some individuals we have taken to hospital to ensure that they are checked out, and that's reassuring for them as well. But also it can initiate an investigation.
Yes.
So we can identify what's believed to have happened. We'll then speak to the staff in that premises. We will review the CCTV. We'll look to identify a suspect. We take forensic samples to test and see if drugs have been used in that situation. So there is a whole investigation plan that comes into play whenever we have a situation like that.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that is reassuring, because I do think it's something that I think sometimes people don't report because they think, oh, well, I won't be believed, but that's absolutely not the starting point.
It's absolutely not, and I worry that has perhaps been the case in the past.
Yeah.
And that may explain why it is that we've seen an increase in reports now, because it has been talked about in the public arena, which raises awareness of the issue, makes people think about it more. But I hope as well that people understand and are reassured that we absolutely do take these reports seriously. Our officers are briefed about what to do in that circumstance, and I'm confident that they do it. As I say, we've increased the number of patrols that we've got in the area, with officers specifically briefed what to look for, and we're engaging with the staff in premises again to raise their awareness. So they're looking for unattended drinks, and where they're advising customers around that. We're providing container tops, with all these kind of practical measures that businesses and people would take to keep themselves safe.
Yeah, but really what we need to do is just stop those drugs getting in those bars and deal with anyone, and anyone who is caught to be spiking. That's a really serious offence.
It certainly is.
Yeah, it is essentially poisoning someone.
It's a criminal offence of poisoning. It's taken very seriously as a serious crime. But the main thing that we're doing is working to prevent that happening in the first place, of course. And part of that is the search policies in bars as well, as condition of entry. But most importantly for us, it's that ability to gather information and intelligence so that we could identify if there was somebody who was going out doing that type of thing, so that we can then share information about them and ensure that they do get arrested and prosecuted.
So Jennifer's asked a question, which is actually, it's something that I've had countless conversations with people about in the last few months, particularly as we've asked people to tell us where they don't feel safe. And the time when people don't feel safe is travelling, usually alone, usually at night, usually on public transport. And so Jennifer said, myself and other women sometimes feel unsafe when travelling home after a night out using public transport. What are you doing to reassure us that this is a safe way to travel? So this is obviously something that that we have been dealing with an awful lot recently, and I'm going to take the opportunity to plug a new app that we've now got for iPhones and Androids. You can download. It's called Safer Transport Northumbria. You can just search that, and that is an anonymous reporting option for anybody who's using any of our transport or moving around our area, where they can discreetly contact the police or Crime Stoppers or a victim service and let you know that something's happening.
Yeah,
and that's a direct result of women telling us that this is a problem.
And it gives a range of options for people to go to, from directly contacting the police, which we'd encourage if there's something happening now that you need assistance there and then. But there's also an opportunity to raise awareness about places where people might feel less safe.
Yes.
So to bring information to the attention of Nexus, the transport organisation around our metro system, or Stagecoach around buses, and that helps us gather information and intelligence about if there's particular locations on the network where people feel less safe.
Yeah.
And then we can work with them, and I know they're very keen to improve the sense of safety on the network. We've done a lot of work with them in the past. We're still doing a lot of work with them now, where we look to identify where there are areas where we should either introduce physical infrastructure such as better lighting,
yeah,
or whether we do operations. And we do occasionally do operations where we will deploy police officers with staff from Nexus and staff from youth services at particular stations,
yeah,
engaging with the public coming in and out, engaging, and that ranges from checking that people have got an appropriate ticket for
yeah,
something, through to stop and search operations, but also simply reassurance to make people understand that there is a police presence around the network. We have a dedicated team of officers,
yeah,
the metro unit, that's their role. They go out and they travel on the trains in plain clothes a lot of the time, sometimes in uniform, but their role is identifying whether there are risk issues within the network and ensuring we take action to address those. And we've got a really strong working relationship with the transport providers around.
And actually, my experience is that the transport providers, Nexus, and all of the bus companies actually in the region, the local councils, have been fantastic to work with on this app project and on this project around getting more CCTV and more lighting, because absolutely it's so important. People want three things, I think, from transport. They want it to be affordable, they want it to be reliable, and they want it to be safe, and so it's in everybody's interest. But going back to that question, you mentioned the physical operations, having police out on the network. The feedback often is, but you just need more cops, and I would agree with that. But there's X number of buses, metros, and we just don't have the resource and the funding for that. And so asking people to be our eyes and ears.
Absolutely, it's important. We want people to look out for each other when they're on the network, and if there is behaviour happening on a train, for example, you're not comfortable with, this app does provide an opportunity to report that. We'd encourage people that sometimes an important factor in a public environment is the sense of safety provided by those around you.
Yeah.
That other people are watching, that other people are there to help you as well. And obviously not everyone's always going to feel safe to step in and take action themselves, but this does provide an opportunity for them to either directly straight contact the police. If there's a crime happening now, we'd always say call 999. But if it's more seeking information about what can we do, how can I report an issue that's made me uncomfortable, how can I report some behaviour that wasn't an actual immediate crime that I felt I needed to call 999 about, but I'd like to make you aware of it so that we can then take some action.
You want it noted.
Exactly, noted, yeah. This does provide people another opportunity to do that, another communication method.
And I think for me, the big thing, and this came out of a conversation with women in Blythe, who were really concerned about safety after the Sarah Everard case, was that just the ability to do it discreetly. You can't. It's very much draws attention to you if you ring 101 or 999. But using the app means you just look like you're sending a text.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing about this initiative is that we are equipping more of the metro staff, more of the bus staff, more cops with body-worn cameras. So even if you're not chased down in the moment if you're misbehaving, the evidence is going to be there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll certainly investigate and bring people to justice. But what our priority around it, as always, is prevention. It's about creating a safe environment for people, whether it be on our transport network, in our parks, which is another issue that we're looking at, isn't it? And as we've talked about already, in the nighttime economy and in our streets.
We could definitely do a whole other session like this on parks, on ASB, on neighbourhood presence, and maybe we will. But for now, we've got a question come in about serious violence. I think a lot of people are this is something that is growing in people's consciousness. The idea of gang violence, youth violence, serious violence, carrying knives. So I think probably a good thing for us to talk a little bit about what's being done on that, and certainly I can talk about our violence reduction unit, but do you want to talk a bit about the policing?
A very important priority for us is addressing serious violence. There's a whole range of different natures of that, and we would include within that knife crime is one aspect of it, violence that we see within organised crime groups, but also domestic abuse, sexual violence.
Yeah.
There's a range of issues that we look to address, and we use different tactics and methods depending on what those particular elements of violent behaviour are. But as you know, we work very closely, or we do work very closely with the violence reduction unit in relation to this. Some of our focuses have been around improving our understanding of what it is that causes violence in our communities, where some of our more affected communities are, what the factors are that can lead to that, and then working together to have a whole range of responses to address it. Some of that is investigations to bring to justice those that are responsible for that type of offending. Others are proactive operations where we're getting police out on patrol, searching for weapons, addressing individuals who we know are violent offenders, looking to arrest them and deal with them. A really important aspect of it is education, isn't it? It's about working with young people, we call early intervention. So, and that ranges from going to schools to talk to young people about violence offending and behaviours, and give them advice and support about how to deal with anything that they might feel threatened by or concerned about. And that can also involve, when we identify young people who may be at risk of becoming involved in offending, providing them and their families early support. And that's a really big focus for us.
And I think the really important thing about this is it's not soft stuff.
No.
Some of the challenges that these families have are beyond what you or I could think of day to day, and they need support with that. But also, the options given to some of these young people who are getting involved in things they shouldn't, they're not soft stuff.
No, absolutely not. No. And we've got a lot of different voluntary organisations that provide support and assistance, and professionals who are very well informed about the kind of support that young people need, the kind of counselling support that they need, the assistance with keeping them engaged with school, with positive activities such as sport. We've got some great operations running with the football clubs and the football foundations.
Absolutely, and they are key. All of these youth organisations, whether they're boxing clubs or football clubs or hairdressers or youth clubs, or there are a range of organisations which we work with through the violence reduction unit, which are all about stopping them from picking up the knife in the first place, stopping them from getting involved in the violence in the first place, and then if they do, then it's about that intervention at the earliest possible point. And ultimately, if necessary, it is also about prosecution of those crimes and making sure that they're dealt with very seriously.
Certainly, and they certainly will be. Thankfully, as an area, we have comparatively low levels of crime involving weapons. People have seen in the media about stabbing incidents and knife crime, which is obviously a major concern. And it does happen here, but we have comparatively less of that type of violent crime than we see in other major cities in the country.
But it's our job to prevent it, absolutely. Do you know, I'm going to throw this last one in because it might not seem directly like a policing question, but I think it's really important because it just shows how it all links together, the lack of funding, the lack of good quality services, and how that becomes a safety issue. And Lisa's asked about an issue that she had on Friday night. The last train home to Corbridge from Newcastle was cancelled on Friday night. at the last minute, no other transport provided. What are people supposed to do to get home safely in this instance? Obviously, you know, that goes back to this point about the fact that people need reliable, affordable transport, and you know, we really have to deal with the situation around transport in this region, and that is a safety issue, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely it is. Yeah, and I can sympathise with that because I occasionally catch that same train myself, so I can imagine that you'd be in a difficult position. But yeah, I mean, these are public services. It's all effectively interrelated.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It all enables people to live their lives in an effectively safe way. As I say, there's a whole range of issues. We work as part of a broad range of public services, trying to make sure that people have services that work for them.
And yeah, and so when you hear, you know, people like myself shouting out for better quality public services, it is all related to, yes, making the region work properly, yes, making sure people have got good quality services, but keeping them safe as well. I think we've covered an awful lot of ground, and it's been, these obviously are water, they're not gin and tonic, so the people will be at home now wanting to get on to having their dinner and maybe a glass of wine. So thank you so much for joining us this evening and listening to this, and if you're joining us afterwards, please do feel free to continue to ask questions. The team in my office, the force, will continue to pick up and answer your questions, give us your thoughts and your ideas. And I think we discussed very briefly there that we'd love to do another one of these potentially on antisocial behaviour in the future, so do join us for that. We'll get it advertised. Huge thank you to Charts, where we are today. They are closed on a Monday and a Tuesday, and they have let us use this brilliant venue. They're obviously really committed to keeping their customers safe, and you know, this is testament to that. So we really appreciate the use of the venue. And to everybody out there, remember, if you see something you're uncomfortable with, use the app, make a call, ring 999, ring 101. But most of all, have a safe and a happy Christmas and a happy New Year. And we will be back with another one of these soon. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you very much.